Alright, so we were talking about range. We were talking pistols. For example, pistols at short range were +1 to hit, and at long range I think they were -1 to hit. Regular bolters were just normal to hit, and -1 to hit at more than half range. If your target moved, I believe they got a -1 to hit. Or if they ran, they would be -1 to hit. I'm not sure exactly about that, but there were, a lot more logical movement rules and shooting at moving vehicles, and you got +2 to hit vehicles because they were big. You also, realistically, and I believe this is true, you were required to shoot at the closest troop type of the unit you were shooting. In other words, if you were shooting a vehicle, you shot the closest one. If you were shooting a squad, you shot the closest one, or individual character closest one. That's the way the rules work, and if you really think about it and talk to combat veterans, you're going to find out the troops fire at the easiest target. And the one that looks like it's closest, because the closest one is going to be the biggest threat in the mind of any fucking buddy who's being attacked. In other words, you could actually screen your units, by putting your lower value units up front. This is a major change in the rules, one which I kind of irritated me many times, but I saw the logic behind it, and it can't be denied that most of the time troops are going to fire at the closest threat and the most easily visible and easy to hit. So that was the rule. If you were going to shoot at a vehicle, you had to shoot at the closest one. So if the guy was screening his force with empty rhinos, well, that's what he did. You have to blow the rhinos before you can get to his more high-value units, and that was part of the game too. And had a serious effect on strategy, of course, because you had a way to prevent your more valuable units from being engaged until you were ready to engage them. The opponent would, of course, be trying to get past that by either moving around your vehicles and getting closer to your other vehicles. So let's see, what have I covered? Hand-to-hand combat and the difference, range modifiers to weapons, armor modifiers to weapons. What else is different? A lot of the rules are still similar. You can still fire from inside vehicles, but the way they had it there, you could fire two troopers could shoot from any side, and a maximum of 2, or 2 firing ports per side of all your armored personnel carriers, except for, of course, Imperial Guard Chimeras, which had firing points for the whole squad, pretty much. What else was different? Those were the major differences so far. In some of the other big differences are that you had a war gear book, and your characters could pick war gear freely, and they could just pick whatever they wanted. You got, like, the power of a character was determined by the number of items he could take from the war gear book, but he wasn't assigned an item and not allowed to trade it in like they give it now. Like some mighty hero with all this prestige and fame and probably money can't afford, like, the best weapons. Yeah, right, okay. The game is just so artificially limiting in its current form that I don't even want to play it. I want to play second editions, which is why I'm making these videos, and hopefully I can interest some people, and maybe somebody with the technology and miniatures and stuff to get into a group playing this second edition. I'm more than willing to get the books, the 3 that you need, and game master it. I don't even have to play. I just like to game master it and watch Warhammer 40K played in its original form. Now so your characters can take anything from the war gear table they want to take. They just have to spend the points, and of course the more powerful characters get more picks. So and they get to pick what they want, which makes a hell of a lot more sense than, well, you're a major hero, but you're not allowed to have a special weapon. Most characters could take a melt-a-gun, except, a special weapon. Couldn't take heavies, but they could take specials, like You know, you could take one pick from the special weapon table, etc., etc. And all these weapons were found in a single book that had all the weapons for all the races, and they had some supplements for it, more weapons and new races, which is always better. More weapons, more trickier weapons, more funny-looking templates that drop out of nowhere and destroy your squad. What? Oh no! Okay, so some of the fundamental mechanics of the game have drastically changed, mostly hand-to-hand combat, mostly the power of characters, the versatility of characters, their ability to, you never know what they're going to have, even if it's a named character, although named characters would have to take certain things, they could still have choices from the War Gear book. You see what I mean? They weren't limited. Well, he can have this item and this item if he spends the points, but he can't have anything else. He's, nope. You know, that's so silly and stupid. Why limit the game? I mean, and the reason they did, they dumbed this game down so that people can play it and just push miniatures around and not have to learn a system. And the truth is, most people who play these games read books. They spend most of their time with noses in books anyway. You know, give them some rules to play, some good ones, like you used to have Warhammer, or like we could have now if I can find a group who'll play. So let's get on to some more differences. Major differences. War Gear. You know, let me tell you, man. Well, before I get into the War Gear, well, let's go into the War Gear. War Gear, what did you have? Just about anything you could imagine. They're true 40th century or 400th century, it is, I think, 40th or 400th, 20... Yeah, 400th century, I guess it is. Wow, my math is bad today, I guess. I'm guessing. I don't feel like doing any division or multiplication in my head at the moment. But anyway, so it's like 40 centuries in the future, right? And the best they can come up with is like melt-a-guns and las cannons, frag grenades. I mean, come on, man. Well, you know, in Warhammer 40K, the original, you used to have what's called like the worst weapon in the universe was a vortex grenade. Man, they were 50 points, and there was no save against them. If you hit with that grenade, whatever you hit got sucked into the warp and became demon food. That's all there was to it. And the vortex grenade would suck up a tank, it would suck up, no save, no invulnerables, no nothing. You're just fucking sucked into the warp and demon food, and that's all there is to it. The only defense against a vortex grenade was a vortex detonator, and only vehicles could carry a vortex detonator. So, and only one was allowed per army. So, you could get a vortex detonator. It was really expensive. You could get a vortex grenade, but you always risk a vortex detonator. If somebody activated a vortex grenade, like within 20 inches or something of your detonator, it went off immediately and sucked up whoever was trying to throw it. So, vortex grenades were one thing, and you rarely ever saw a vortex grenade because they were really expensive, and it was considered bad sportsmanship to use one. I don't know why, but it was. I put vortex detonators on my tanks anyway because I didn't trust anybody. Not after my first few games of Warhammer 40K, and I saw what was coming down on my forces. Oh my God! Weapons were great, man. Templates were real templates. You know, you got bombardment, you have big old foot diameter template. Bam! Did I hit anything? Yep. Oh, that hurt. You know, that's Imperial Guard orbital bombardment. But there was such a diversity in weapons. I guess I should describe a game. A typical game we have. Yeah, like I said, 6,000 points per side. And let's say we're fighting orcs. Alright, everybody deploys. Okay, we're cool now. The orcs say, okay, we're firing our pulsar rockets pre-game before the first turn, and they're going to land right on top of Dave's battle sisters. Oh, shit, not again. Okay, since you're fighting orcs, you can't deploy inside your vehicles because they're going to fire pulsar rockets before the game starts in your deployment zone. And they're going to, like, randomly turn your vehicles in a 360-degree random direction, and then they're going to move a certain amount of dice, and that could be off the board. And so you had to keep your troops away from your vehicles, and then your troops might get knocked down and have to not be able to do anything in the first turn because they're on the ground trying to get up while the earth's shaking, and meanwhile the hordes of orcs are advancing across the field, and you can't shoot at them because you got earthquaked. There was like a graviton gun, and I especially hated those things because they pick up your tanks, put them up 100 feet in the air, turn them upside down, and then drop them. And ouch. And like all your stuff doesn't help. Speaking of tanks, I don't know what they have right now, but they're more like rust buckets, rattle cans, man. One of my tanks, I typically took Predator tanks. I'd take 3 of them in a Space Marine army. And they had a blade of armor, which negated the first penetration. There wasn't anything such thing as hull points. There were specific locations with specific armor values: track, sponson, hull, and turret. And you could be hitting the hull or turret from the side or rear. Sponsons, it didn't make any difference which side. So if you got hit in the sponson, its armor value was only 10, a bolter could penetrate it on a lucky roll, and you could end up with your tank blown up if the ammunition blows up in the sponson. Hull value, frontal hull value on a Rhino or Predator was 20. And you had to roll good penetration, like a las cannon got 2 penetration plus 10 or something like that. So that's how that worked. If you got penetrated, you got hit in a location, penetrated, you roll on the penetration chart for that location. You could lose a sponson. In other words, there were very many more varied results, and exact locations were hit. Tanks were harder to knock out, but there was a lot nastier weaponry around too. So my tanks had a blade of armor, which allowed you to negate 1 penetration, and then the ablative was considered to be knocked off. Figure like reactive explosive armor, something like that. I also had ceramite, which cost 50 points, but made your tank immune to multi-meltas. Half the penetration roll, not the penetration roll, the total penetration number rolled, including, you know, the base plus the die roll, and then you have that. So a Predator with ceramite was pretty much immune to multi-melta, and that was useful. The tanks still got knocked out, but they were 300-point tanks, and they were hard to take down. Back then, twin-linked weapons were, if you hit with the twin-linked weapon, you hit with both weapons. You either hit or missed. There was no re-rolling, and your weapons hit in the same location. So if I shot a tank with a twin-linked las cannon and hit, both the las cannons would hit, and both the las cannons would hit the same location. Same thing if you're shooting your las cannon at infantry. However, in that case, the first one would just slice an infantry guy, and the second one would kill another one. So on vehicles, you hit the same location. On troops, you score multiple wounds on multiple characters. Bolters had auto-fire dice. Each bolter would hit, like, I think it was 1 to 4 or 1 to 3 times. If you hit with twin-link bolters, you had a potential of 6 hits with strength 5 and -2, +2 armor save modifier. So heavy bolters were one of the nastiest weapons in the game in original 40K. They just mow your ass down, man, especially if you got a good roll, you know. So in other words, the auto-fire dice, you could fire a bolter and only get 1 hit. But you could fire the bolter and get 3. It was variable. And if you had twin-linked, you could get up to 6 with 1 hit roll. What else was different? Movement. Tanks could move and fire. You could move at flank speed 24 inches and fire all your weapons.